Welcome everyone to Build 40 Part 1. The name of this build is Zirconium. This will be the most high-end, the most expensive system that we have ever built. It's also going to have the most complex and challenging modifications that we've ever done, with the most amount of CAD work and CNC work. Basically what we're going to be doing with the mods, I'll obviously get into a lot more detail later in the build log, is a crossover between the Inwin Tou 2.0 and a dual loop Spectre. So I reviewed this case recently. You can check out that video for all of the details on the case. But this is a limited edition case. This is actually 222 out of 500. So it's kind of hard to come by. It's very high-end, expensive. It's a beautiful case surrounded by thick tempered glass with a very thick internal aluminium frame. At first glance, it appears that modifications would be very limited, and yes, certainly to the outer glass panels, but working within the internal aluminium frame, there is a lot of potential. This frame lays down the groundwork for, well, pretty much anything. It's very thick and strong, and this is where we are going to be working. But let's start by taking a look at the components. So first of all, the brain of the system is the Threadripper 2, and you guys have no doubt guessed that it is the 2990WX with its 32 cores, 64 threads, 64 PCIe lanes, 250 watt TDP. Now this system, just like a lot of the high-end builds that we do, is already being upgraded. So originally we were going to use the Asus Zenith Extreme, but when the Extreme Alpha was released, considering how high-end this build is, it was just kind of a no-brainer, particularly for the extra power delivery for the CPU. The 250 watts, the old motherboard could do it, and there was even a cooling upgrade that was released, but the extra power delivery components on this board are just insane, and the extra cooling, although we probably are going to be building a custom water block for it anyway. I think Extreme Alpha sums up this motherboard very well. When I picked it up, I realized it's probably the heaviest board that I have ever felt, but it's incredibly solid. There's no flex to it at all. It's definitely a beast of a motherboard. The first thing that caught my eye is the power delivery. I count 16 MOSFETs. It has active cooling with 2 fans and a huge heat pipe that runs around, and underneath the rear I/O, where there's no doubt even more cooling. I'm going to be dismantling all of that and learning about it very thoroughly, because I need to design a water block for this motherboard, which I'm really excited about doing. So we have 64 PCIe lanes, 128 gigabytes of memory, up to 3600 megahertz, 3 M.2 slots, 1 on the board, 2 on the DIMM.2. They all have extra cooling, aluminium heat sinks. I love the shields, the covers that they're putting on these boards now. It just looks great. You can see that the EPS is again down the right hand side of the board, although facing the other direction. But these boards have just a huge array of overclocking features, and also it's the diagnostic features that I find the most useful. The error codes, not so much. I mean, they're very useful, of course, but what I use the most are the LEDs during post when the different components are being polled, the CPU, the memory, LEDs light up on the right hand side of the board on these high-end ROG boards, and so you can immediately pinpoint any kind of problem, memory incompatibility, anything that's stopping the system from booting, if it's not posting at all. And then you have USB BIOS flashback. You can flash the BIOS when the system isn't even on. You don't even need to get into the BIOS. So features like that mean that you can sort out basically any problem. And I just find myself always being able to work through problems within minutes on these boards. The NVIDIA RTX 2080 Ti were the obvious choice for this system. Asus Strix, cooled with EK water blocks and backplates. But as I said, this system is being upgraded along the way. So we now have two Titan RTX, which are going to be replacing the RTX 2080 Ti's. And these are some of the most incredible looking GPUs that I've ever seen. NVIDIA has done an amazing job here at making these GPUs look about as expensive as they are. I mean, I would say that the aesthetics match pretty well with the black and gold, and I just love the little details. I mean, gold anodizing always looks incredible, and with this very fine sandblasted finish, the gold fasteners, the gold trim around the fan blades, and the NVLink bridges to match, I'm sure we're going to be seeing a lot of color schemes to match these GPUs. But definitely the ultimate choice for this system, and I'm just very excited to be getting my hands on components like this, and I cannot wait to get this system up and running to see what we can do with a motherboard like the Asus ROG Extreme Alpha and these GPUs. This is definitely going to be a lot of fun. But I'll now be quiet and just try to do these GPUs some justice. So by now you're probably starting to wonder what we have in mind for storage for this build. It was certainly going to be all M.2s, but how about 10 970 Pro 1TB M.2s and a couple of Hyper M.2 RAID cards from Asus. So 8 of these are going on the RAID cards in RAID 0, and another 2 are going onto the DIMM.2 on the motherboard. And I haven't even done the math on the performance yet, but needless to say, I can't wait to benchmark this system. I've never done anything like this before. One of the most complex aspects of this loop is the fact that we need to implement 16 bits power hexagonal reservoirs, 8 of them on each side of the distribution plate that is going to be in this system, with 2 loops, the different colors flowing through different reservoirs on both sides. So it's kind of like a Rubik's Cube to figure out the flow, where it's going to go, the directions, how many layers it's going to pass through, in the design, because it needs to pass through the distribution plate multiple times to get different colors on different sides. And to make things symmetrical, there's only one way that it can be done to achieve the particular pattern that the customer is after. But this is certainly a whole lot of bits power hexagon reservoirs, more than I've ever seen together. And we've also swapped all of the lids to the blank versions.